All right, guys, welcome back to another video. So, the Xbox tax is back in the discussions again on social media, as there has been more stuff that has occurred over the last couple of days. First of all, you had Destin's video saying that the Xbox tax is not real. And I think that really pissed off a lot of people who have been following a lot of the biases that they have seen popping up within gaming journalism in terms of being just negative against Xbox, putting out articles clearly just to get clicks. Now, in his video, I would say that I agree with some of his points, but the major part that I disagree with is when he thinks that the Xbox tax is some major conspiracy theory that Xbox fans think that is happening behind the scenes, where all of the gaming journalist media is coming together and deciding just to hate Xbox and make sure they put out negative content towards Xbox. I don't think that's what people are referring to at all when it comes to the Xbox tax. I mean, you guys can correct me in the comments below. The way I look at it is basically people can see that there are biases in journalism. There are biases in gaming journalism, and people are hoping that when games are being reviewed, when the platforms are being talked about, that they will always be talked about in a completely objective way, which I think is unrealistic. You think about anybody you watch on YouTube, any video game website that you go to, everybody has a bias. Like I said in my other video talking about this, I obviously have a bias towards Xbox. It's my platform of preference. I far more prefer the way that they are doing business by giving more value to gamers with things like Xbox Game Pass. I think a lot of the stuff that PlayStation does from the business side of things just they are isn't good. Like, they know that their players will pay for literally anything and they take advantage of that. So those things, my bias is towards Xbox. I prefer Xbox, and I'm pretty transparent on that on my channel. But I do try to also look at things from a more leveled perspective when announcements come out for PlayStation, for Xbox. I think PlayStation does have some great games under their belt. So from that sense, I kind of understand where the Xbox community is coming from when it comes to the Xbox tax, because you are seeing non-stop articles that always seem to pop up and focus more on the negative side of Xbox. I think about all the negative stuff when it comes to the Xbox Series S, the amount of articles that pop up when any time a developer comes out, who it may not even be a developer. We've seen like the visual artists and people just really don't have any actual programming and development jobs where they're utilizing these consoles and making these games optimized for these consoles, coming out and saying that there's issues with development because of the Xbox Series S. And then you see that picked up in and people making it a much bigger story than it is, when the reality of the situation is, I've said this many times on my channel, and I don't know why this isn't talked about more, but overall, this generation, no matter how much you hate the Xbox Series S, no matter how much you think the Xbox Series S is holding back gaming, if you look at it from its lifespan since its release, there have been far more positive experiences than negative experiences on the Xbox Series S. And by that, I mean being able to play the new AAA games in a good way, with good frame rates, good resolutions for what the Xbox Series S was marketed for what it is offering. So, I mean, even just right now, you can play MW3. There's 120 FPS mode on the Series S. The game looks great. The game runs great. So, unless you're nitpicking every little thing, there are far more positive experiences with the Series S than negative experiences. But you only hear about all the negative stuff when it comes to it. And you think about Starfield and being not in the Game of the Year awards. And I think, honestly, I'm not surprised at all about Starfield not being in the Game of the Year nomination. It was a title that had mixed reviews when it came out. Overall, mostly positive, mostly good reviews, but there were outlets out there that just didn't like the game and they gave it mediocre to negative reviews. IGN gave it a 7 out of 10, and we saw some other reviews out there that would not put it in a Game of the Year conversation. And those are the people voting on these awards. So expecting them to all of a sudden vote for Starfield for Game of the Year probably is extremely unrealistic. And then you see things like this, and this is kind of why we are talking about this again. This is from Gaming Bolt, and they are specifically talking about how Starfield could be in trouble as the player numbers plummet. So This got a lot of people talking about the Xbox tax again. Why are they talking about player numbers for Starfield a few months after its release when the reality is it's a single player game? It has done very well at launch, had huge concurrent numbers at launch, over 300,000 sold, tons of copies. It is a good game commercially, even if these player numbers are falling off from a single player experience where a lot of people play through it, finish it, and that's it. Then they put it away until they remember about the game when some new content comes out, or maybe mods come out at a different time. Very similar to kind of what happens with Bethesda games of the past. People play it at launch, it's huge, and then it slowly starts to fall down in terms of player numbers. And then mods come out, more content comes out, and then those numbers pick up again. And it's really no different here with Starfield. Maybe it's fallen off a little bit faster than a game like Skyrim, but Skyrim was just insane. It's doing better than Fallout 4. So it's kind of in the wheelhouse of I think where Bethesda was expecting this game to be a few months after its launch. And they're also expecting the player numbers to increase once more content and more mods do come out. But this is the article here, and the title itself has a lot of people talking. I actually read through the article, and I will say, being completely honest with you guys, I read through every single word of this article. It is not nearly as bad as I would have expected. And as people are looking, when they look at the title, they may think it is going to be. I actually read through, they talk about the game itself. They talk about the reviews and how the impressions and the reviews overall were mostly positive. Like they talk about the Metascore being in the 80s. They also talk about how the game has actually fallen off in terms of Steam reviews, where there have been more negative reviews coming out later after its release. I haven't gone through all those reviews. I'm not sure what people are saying. I'm not sure if it's technical issues. I'm not sure if they just don't like the game, or if the initial hype has died down and people are in there trying to bring the review scores down. Not quite sure, but the same thing happened with Cyberpunk 2077. But I hate the comparison of Starfield versus Cyberpunk 2077 at launch, because Cyberpunk 2077, there are people out there that still come out and say it was always a good game, which is absurd. Just because you had a good experience with Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't mean it was always a good game. The reality of Cyberpunk is, objectively, when it released, it was a broken game. They literally had to take it off of the PlayStation Store. They had to take it off of storefronts because it just didn't work. Even if that was only on the PS4, the Xbox One, where it didn't run very well, it also wasn't running great on some of the next gen consoles. And there are just issues across the board. I saw tons of issues on PC. It was an absolutely broken game. The content in there may have been good for a lot of people who played it. They may have enjoyed the story. They may have enjoyed the characters. But the reality is, Cyberpunk 2077 at launch was not a good game. And saying that it was a good game at launch, I think, is very revisionist history. And we're seeing all the praise that it's getting now, getting awarded for nominations with the ongoing game and all of this type of stuff. They've definitely bounced back greatly, but it was not a good game at launch. So that comparison with Cyberpunk 2077 at launch, to me, is just very annoying. Starfield, on the other hand, was a great game at launch. It was a good to great game depending on who you are. To me, it was a great game. Some people it's just a good game, and then there are other people out there who think it was a bad game. But most people think it was a good to great game at launch, and their bugs were very minimal. Game ran well, whether you're on Xbox, even if you were in 30 FPS, it was a very smooth 30 FPS. I played it on the Xbox Series X. It was a great experience. There was nothing about Starfield at launch where you could say, yeah, this game objectively is just a brutal, terrible game. There's going to be people out there who liked it and people out there who didn't like it, but it was nothing like Cyberpunk. And then they kind of do some comparisons here. They say at least it's doing better than Fallout 4, which had a 24-hour peak of 15,184 players, though its all-time peak was 472,000. So in the same, I guess, time frame, the 24-hour peak of Starfield, which is in the 20,000s right now, is higher than it was a Fallout 4, but lower than Skyrim. Even Skyrim now, the special edition or the anniversary edition, still has a ton of players actually playing it. If you take a look here at some of the Steam database, you can see that Skyrim, the original version that did come out, peak 287,000. Skyrim Special Edition, peak 906,000, and then Starfield all-time peak 330,000. But even as of right now, the Skyrim Special Edition has 23,000 people playing. Starfield has 20,000 people playing, and then the OG Skyrim has 1,600 people playing. So the Skyrim is just in a league of its own with how the longevity of that game. But even with that being said, I don't think that this means Starfield isn't going to have an extremely long lifespan. I saw some takes on social media as well where people were saying the reason why these articles are being written is because the Xbox fan base hyped up Starfield so much like it was this huge generational game that's going to last 10 years or whatever. I mean, it deserved the hype. If you're somebody who loved Starfield, a lot of people loved it. The hype met the expectations. But is this game going to be a 10-year game? I wouldn't be surprised if this is a game that has a very long lifespan. 10 years, maybe slightly less than that, but I wouldn't be surprised because more content's coming. There's going to be mods. This is going to be a game that's just insane with the amount of people that are going to go out there and make it their own world. So looking at this right now, because the players have fallen to 20,000, thinking, oh, this is just all of the false hype from Xbox players, and this game is dead already in a year or whatever. It's going to be dead. It's just crazy to me. The Starfield is going to continue to expand, and we're going to see people playing Starfield in 10 years from now. I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing similar numbers to what we're seeing here with the special edition version of Skyrim, because they're going to release more versions of Starfield. You can almost bet on that. And you're going to see special editions. You're going to see um, end of the year best edition. I don't know, whatever they do, right? The stuff that they always do at Bethesda, they are going to be doing that type of stuff here with Starfield. And you're going to see player numbers across all of these games just continue to stay steady. People playing this for years and years to come. There's so much that can be done with all the planets. So I don't get the argument that it's not going to be a game that lasts very long. And then they go on here again. They could talk a little bit more about Cyberpunk. They also talk about where it sits in terms of the overall list. It's in 43rd place behind games like Elden Ring, Valheim, Stardew Valley, and Terraria. They also do this part of the article, which I think good on them for making some clarifications here in terms of that Starfield is not a failure. It is actually a success. They say, to clarify, this doesn't mean Starfield is a failure. It crossed 11 million players as of October 25th and holds the record for the most number of Game Pass subscriptions in a single day. Nearly half of all hours played were on PC. So while its current position on the Steam charts looks dismal, its place in the Xbox charts looks somewhat better. And they say, well, Microsoft and Bethesda haven't shared sales numbers. It was the 7th best-selling game of the year in the United States as of October 18th. So obviously, Starfield is not a failure of a game. It was actually very successful and will continue to be successful. And they also mentioned things here, like I just mentioned, that mod support is coming next year, which should heavily expand on the available experiences and gameplay features. And they've already announced that post-launch DLC is coming with the Shattered Space. So more content is coming. People are going to continue to play Starfield. But I guess where the Xbox tax does come in is people are asking, one, why is this even something to really talk about? Why are they even trying to create this negative news from Xbox and from Starfield and from an Xbox game? And two, player counts when it comes to single player experiences. This always happens. You have tons of people launch and then it falls off. This isn't a live service game. So why is that even a major focus? The game has already hit tons of concurrent players. It already had the biggest, like they said, increase in Game Pass subscriptions. It sold extremely well. Starfield has its success. So talking about it now 3 months after its launch is merely to create a negative look, a negative narrative surrounding the biggest Xbox release in 2023. So when people talk about the Xbox tax, they're not talking about this grand conspiracy where all the gaming journalists are behind the scenes and saying, we're going to write negative articles about Xbox because we hate Xbox. What they're saying is there are far more negative biases towards the Xbox platform that we see in terms of articles, we see in terms of journalism, than we see against PlayStation. Now, that can be again argued. Maybe someone has a list of every single negative article for PlayStation and Xbox. Maybe that isn't the case, but that's what people are talking about when they talk about the Xbox tax. And it's hard to argue against it with a lot of the weird stuff that journalists do put out. The reality of the situation, like I said, is everybody has a bias. PlayStation is a more popular platform. There will be people coming into the gaming industry every day as journalists with a preference for PlayStation. You look at the review code requests, way more for PlayStation. So people will prefer the PlayStation platform over Xbox, whether we want to admit it or not. That is what people are talking about when they do talk about the Xbox tax. But I'm going to leave the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.